What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to more Destiny. It's been a little while since I've done a video on this, but seeing as how patch 2.0 has dropped, the Taken King is less than a week away, I think it's time we jump back in and full force. So, for the week prior to Taken King, we've had patch 2.0 drop exactly 1 week before. And with 2.0 came most of the big changes that we're going to be seeing in the game, and I want to outline those in the next coming videos. But while I do that, I'm going to be showing gameplay of the weapons in their new states. I have auto rifles, pulse rifles, scout rifles, hand cannons. I have every single type of weapon at the ready to show off how they perform now, as opposed to before, where hand cannons reigned supreme, pulse rifles were close behind, scout rifles were and auto rifles were garbage. It should be more balanced now, but we're going to really test that in the coming videos. I would also like to show off all of the new maps, more specifically, so you'll be seeing gameplay of that, as well as a Rift mode, and Mayhem mode is going to be covered in a separate video later because it's not actually going to be available until the 11th. So, we're going to start with a few things in this video, and I'm not going to be able to cover all of the patch notes, because I'm going to give my impressions on them and, you know, what I think of the ideas and what, you know, if they're any good, or if they're bad, possibly. But for the most part, everything in here is pretty solid and is something that people have actually wanted in the game. So, for this first video, we're going to be talking about characters and classes. We'll be getting into weapons in the next video. So, the stuff regarding your character is pretty well known for most people. Character level cap is raised to 34 as of right now for all players. Character level will be grandfathered into highest possible light level from all gear in your inventory and vault. So now light level is going to determine more than your actual character level, but we'll explain more of that in a minute. Character level cap will be increased to 40 on September 15th, which you'll have to have the Taken King to actually access. Character level and light are now separate stats. Light is now calculated by the average of the attack and defense scores of all your gear. Weapons, ghost, class items, and artifacts now all contribute to light, and Grimoire score has now moved from the character nameplate and now displays in the character screen. So, with light levels, or every weapon is going to have a light level in this game, and they can be continuously increased by using a more powerful weapon to fuse into a weaker weapon, thus bringing it up to that light level. Yada yada yada. It's all going to average out to a single stat, and that is going to determine your actual power in the game. What does your level mean? Well, really all it means is once you hit the max level, you can start accessing end-game content. Other than that, your character level seems to be pretty useless, which, honestly, I don't know how I feel about that, kind of. Like, for instance, they showed a preview today, today being the 8th that I'm recording this, and you're getting this on the 9th, that character level, or the level for the raid is going to be 42. But according to sources, 41 and 42 are barely going to matter that much at all. It's not going to be that much of a difference as long as your light level is high. So, I don't really know what's the point of the levels then. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. They also are going to give light level recommendations for each activity, so I guess, you know, I don't know if level is completely pointless or if it's just a factor that determines, hey, now you can access endgame content. But that's what it feels like to me. But now you have ghosts, class items, and artifacts contributing to your light level as well. Artifacts and ghosts being new weapons that actually do something. Before we just had the ghost shells, and there was only 2 in the game, being the normal one and the frontier shell with the collector's edition. But now ghosts are going to actually mean something. Attack power values on weapons and gear have been renormalized in preparation for the Taken King. Year 1 attack and defense value caps have now been renormalized for Year 2. So previously 365 attack was the cap. That 365 now translates to 170 attack. So they're actually lowering the number, but that doesn't actually mean they're lowering the damage. The number it's indicative of something else. 365 now just means 170. So all defense values are now on the same scale as attack. So previously you had armor that had a defense of like 500, but your attack was when it was snacks, but your attack values on your weapons only max at 365. Now they're evened out, so you can actually gauge things better. All defense values are now... Oh, yeah, sorry, I just read that. Excuse me. Weapon damage numbers and combatants have been scaled against renormalized attack and defense values. So they're basically just balancing everything so it all works around the same number, the same threshold. Everything is just on the same plane, so nothing is stupid and confusing with just these random numbers that mean things. Who cares? I mean, really, that's whatever. Outgoing and incoming damage has been changed to reflect the new light system. Ability damage is directly computed from your light score. Your light score is a lot higher than your light level, or I mean than your level, by the way. So that's the thing. Level 35 did a lot more damage to level 34, but now that light cap is something around, I want to say, what, 240? I think. It could be higher than that. I have no idea. But even still, a triple-digit number, and you're only going up by 1, 2, 3, or 4, is going to be a lot less of a difference than, let's say, you know, just one level out of 34. Like, you can just tell, like, if you just do the averages, the math, that makes a lot less of a difference. So ability damage is directly computed from your light score, player health is directly computed from your light score, and weapon damage is heavily weighted by both your light score and the attack value of the weapon, combination of the two. So those are all things we kind of know. We just know that light level is going to be more important. However, light level is now its own separate number. It is not actually your based on your level. That is experience based only. You will be leveling up to level 40 with experience only. Thank goodness. Classes, general. Intellect, strength, and discipline now only change their effective fixed tiers. Intellect, strength, and discipline stats now display their tier and the exact duration of the effect on the tooltip in the character screen. From what I saw, there are 5 tiers to each stat for intellect, strength, and discipline now. And so basically, you have an intellect, strength, and discipline level on your weapon, but that number is only going to increase it into tiers. You could be at the very high end of the first tier, and it's still no better than being just like at the very low end of the second tier, because the whole tier determines your cooldown. So regardless of where you are in that tier, it's not going to increase, or it's not going to decrease your cooldown on anything any further. But as soon as you clip to second tier, you're going to notice an increase. Or I guess a decrease in time. So that's what that's going to do. And it also is going to actually tell you exactly on the stat screen how much that is affecting your cooldown. Orb generation is now capped to a maximum of 8 orbs at once when wearing exotic armor that increase orb spawning rates. So no getting 9 orbs out of Light Beyond Nemesis, out of Crest of Alpha Lupi, none of that stuff. You're not getting 9 orbs anymore. You know, extra orbs for killing enough enemies in a certain amount of time. Increased recovery stat time at low end by 1 second, and reduced high end reduced timer by 2 seconds. These were renormalized recovery stat effects to make the more compelling character stats choice. What I think they're basically saying is that super high recovery rates have an increased effect, and super low recovery rates have a reduced effect. So if your recovery is low, you're going to feel that even more now. If your recovery is super high, you're going to feel that high recovery even more now. So it's just giving you an incentive to spec on recovery more, because recovery was honestly not a stat a lot of people played into their builds very much. Most people focused on armor, and recovery was a lot less useful. Recovery is now going to be something that's a much more viable. I mean, it was still a useful stat, but now it's going to be even more so, and probably more on par with agility and armor. Unlike it was before. Pulse grenades, secondary effect distance are now globally 8 meters. Thermal and void have gone up from 7 to 8. I'm assuming this is the solar grenades when it says thermal. Arc has gone down from 9 to 8. I'm assuming that's the pulse grenade that you're just referring to. So yeah, that was the Titan one. Went down from 9 to 8. So everything is 8 now. Detonation grenades still unchanged at 7 meters, meaning flux grenades, incendiary grenades, fusion grenades, stuff. Well, I don't know if fusion grenades apply. They might. I don't know. Incendiary grenades are a good example of this, though. Pulse grenade fuse times have actually been reduced. I want to say this is one of two things. This is either a reduced amount of time between each pulse that the grenade makes, or it means that it just doesn't last as long, which could make the Sunbreakers a much more useful thing if these become more useful somehow. And thus that could also make I mean, I guess the fact that they're increasing the radius could make them more useful. But at the same time, you know, this is either a buff or a nerf. I don't really know. They didn't really word that too well. Thermal Pulse, or Incendiary Grenades. Base detonation and damage have been increased to unify stats with other pulse grenades. So now Incendiary Grenades are a little bit more powerful, which is going to put them more on par with Swarm Grenades and Trip Mine Grenades for Gunslingers. And then also fixed, and I guess, well, actually Titans get them now too. Fixed an issue where perks that grant additional super energy for grenade kills did not work correctly in the Crucible. So there were occasionally, there's a stat, I believe it's called Ashes to Asset, where a grenade kill would just get you a ton more, you're supposed to get you more super energy. Sometimes that just would not proc at all. So that's apparently what they're fixing. However, I believe the problem with that was they actually fixed it before in the last patch, because if you had Ashes to Asset, like double spec'd or something like that, with Swarm Grenades, you could instantly fill your super bar on a gunslinger. So I think that's what they did, is they fixed that, and they didn't fix it quite as well, so now they fixed it completely. Now for class-specific fixes. Hunters got the biggest hit, but we're going to start with Titans. Defenders, line attacks, Fist of Havoc, Shockwave, and Arcblade Razor's Edge can now no longer penetrate Ward of Dawn, so it is no longer completely useless in PvE. I don't know how this is going to necessarily apply to like Scion Flayers and stuff like that. That is the big speculation, but I assume it's going to apply. So now Ward of Dawn is a little bit more powerful. You actually have to get into the bubble if you want to get rid of it, or shoot it with a golden gun, or huck a Nova Bomb at it. Basically, you have to do direct damage to it with your actual super. You can't just, or kill the guy inside. You can't just use Razor's Edge on it. Hunters, Gunslinger, golden gun damage increased from 350 to 360. This is in Crucible, to ensure it consistently killed opponents in the Crucible, meaning that like people with high armor spec and a good enough distance away couldn't survive it. Basically, just ensuring that there's no possible way that you will survive it if you are directly hit with a golden gun. There's no reason you should, unless you're at a ridiculously long distance where golden gun cannot even reach. Blade Dancers caught quite a few hits, though. Arcblade can now generate up, however, there's a couple buffs. Arcblade can now generate up to 6 orbs when geared with exotic armor that increased orb spawning rates. I think that already happened in the first place with Crest of Alpha Lupi, so I'm not really seeing the difference there. Blink movement ability activation delay increased by 0.07 seconds. So now you can't activate your blinks over and over. The cooldown's a little bit longer. However, this is going to be offset. There is an exotic coming, by the way. Just spoiler alert. There is an exotic coming that I've seen that is going to completely remove this. In fact, I think it's going to lower the cooldown even further to make Blink a lot more of a nuisance. But here's the thing that really nerfed Blink. There's two things, actually, and it doesn't necessarily say it here, but I heard about this from a lot of other people. One thing that it says, the thing it says in the patch notes is Blink movement ability visuals now changed to better telegraphing direction, clearer activation effects, and trill effects. So now you can see where the Blink's going. You can definitely telegraph it more. You won't lose sight of it. But here's the killer on Blink. Weapons are not ready near as quickly when using Blink, meaning you can't just whip out your shotgun right after you blink and kill something. It takes a while for you to ready your weapons. Blink is going to now make you the most vulnerable after using it with your weapon, so that's why you don't want to blink directly into someone. Blink is now supposed to be used more defensively as opposed to offensively. You need to get out of a situation, you use Blink. You don't want to go into a situation using Blink, or you're going to get shot first. Blink Strike now does arc damage. Thank goodness. I don't know why that wasn't doing that in the first place, but now it does. That's going to be really awesome with fast twitch on arc burn strikes. Arc bolt grenades. Thermal and arc damage reduced by 25% to 75 damage. Okay, it's saying arc bolt grenades, but then when it says thermal, that makes me want to believe that it's also firebolt, but this is in the hunter group, so I'm not positive. Firebolt should be nerfed just as much. I don't know if it was. It might have been, but I was watching someone get hit with a thermal with like half health, and it still didn't kill them. But the burn eventually did, so Viking Funeral did, but the initial hit didn't, so I'm wondering if that also got nerfed, but I'm not quite positive. Arc Bolt range reduced by 11% to 8 meters, So yeah, it's now as wide as the pulse grenades, and it can't chain as further. And then flux grenade tracking shape volume has been changed to reduce tracking aggressiveness. Now here's the one problem I have with this one: they didn't do the same thing to fusion grenades. Fusion grenades stick better, so I don't really understand this. Plus, flux grenades can be countered easier than fusion grenades. Fusion grenade, when you get stuck, you're pretty much dead. A flux grenade, you can, if you blink just as it detonates, it only does like half the damage. And I don't think that same thing works with fusion grenades. So, yeah. Food for thought. And then we go to Warlocks. Armor bonus perk Strength of the Ram found on the exotic helmet the Ram has been reduced from 5 to 3. So it's been reduced by 40%. It's not going to be as strong. But we still have to play around with it to see how much it helps. I'm sure it still helps a little bit. It's just not quite as ridiculous as it was. Like eliminating certain snipers from killing it off of the self-res. It might still keep it from now on you won't be able to keep yourself from getting two-shot by certain weapons like certain pulse rifles or legendary hand cannons with luck in the chamber, stuff like that. Sunsinger fixed an issue where Sunsingers who self-resurrected from Fireborn were given a free orb on respawn. This makes sense. It was kind of weird that they were doing that in the first place, but it makes sense because it is a little bit ridiculous if they can just revive and then give all their teammates a free orb. Fireborn Sunsingers now must successfully kill to spawn orbs. So that's all of the changes. I like what they did with the Titan. They made a Word of Dawn a lot less useless. I like what they did with the Hunters. I'm still not entirely sure or entirely convinced about Blink, but because I haven't seen it used yet, or used too often yet. I have no idea how much that's changed. They're saying it's only on Hunter, so who knows if it's unchanged on the Voidwalker. If it's unchanged on the Voidwalker, that could be a problem, because I feel like the Voidwalker one, although they're not as quick as Hunters, it's still super deadly. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. But overall, I like most of these changes. The only thing I was really disappointed in was no damage buff to Golden Gun in PvE for Hunters. Why the heck not? Golden Gun is freaking useless unless you have the Celestial Nighthawk in PvE. So, what the heck? I don't know. I felt like that it was definitely something that should have been changed. But anyway, that is it for character changes in this video and class changes. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the weapon changes, and then as weapon perks as well. Although I'm not entirely sure if we're going to get to weapon perks, because that's a pretty long list in and of itself, and so are the weapons, and I've got a lot to talk about as far as those are concerned. So I might just include weapons and then the exotic weapons. So I will see you all in the next one.
Your victory gives the city hope, Guardians.